Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flazanes, your empowerment strategist and producer. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about how chronic pain is a lack of self-love. Now, before you rebel against that title, let me tell you how I got here. A few weeks ago, probably a month by now, I was in Sedona, Arizona at a Bruce Lipton workshop. And Bruce boiled sort of the whole epigenetics, quantum physics idea to that if we don't have two beliefs, that we will not heal our bodies. And those beliefs are that you love yourself and that you are safe. If you don't have those two beliefs, then you can't really heal whatever's going on with you. And, I've been in the personal training world, functional medicine world now for 25, 30 years, and physical problems can have physical solutions. But when you try a million different things, from surgeries to physical therapy and you've heard some of this before on the show, acupuncture, chiropractic, different kinds of medicines, different kinds of naturopathic healing, whatever. When you try all the physical things and it doesn't help or work, it's not a physical problem. And so today's show is Dana Croschere's story. She's a producer and the star of the film Love Heals, which I got to view in Sedona at Dr. Bruce Lipton's event. And Dana's the perfect example of what I've been talking about on the show for 10 years. That while we have physical things that are great, and we definitely want to fix the gut, and we want to balance the brain chemistry, and we want to strengthen the muscles, and we want to increase the metabolism, all those things, yes, yes, and yes. And when there is pain that can't be fixed through physical modalities, it's mostly not physical. And again, this is just going to dive deep into a lot of the work that I'm doing, but the film that I'm going to introduce you to today shows the story and the path and all the things that sort of happened for Dana. And you'll see if you see the film, and we talk about some of the things that are being applied to her healing journey and some of the things that the group did and some of the amazing transformations. I mean, that you really owe it to yourself to watch the movie. If you get to see the movie, which is out right now, you can go to lovehealsfilm.com. It's $10 and you get to watch it as many times as you want to right now until the 28th or 29th of August. So you have about a week from the airing of this show. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Dana in a second, but I just want to emphasize this healing piece because when you really get it, that's when I think healing can occur. When we fight our left brain character one logic and reason and belief about certain sciences and genetics, when we fight that, when we don't recognize that that's what's getting in the way of our healing, whatever that may be for you, physical, emotional, spiritual, relational, I'm talking about healing on all sides of this. You get the choice to change your beliefs. You just have to know what they are first, and you have to seek information and seek experiences and even evidence that other people have done that. And there are so many ways to do that, and I can help you with that. So if you're dealing with something that you need to heal, whether it be physical, emotional, relational, spiritual, there are still spots left. This is the last time I'm doing the Rewiring Your Core Wound Patterns program for the year. And so if there's anything that you're living with that you don't want to be living with any longer, and you're wondering when you're going to do something about it, I would encourage you to consider it now. Now might be the time to do something about it. So if that's of interest to you, you can apply. It may not be a fit for either one of us, but it's free to apply. Go to jjflazanes.com/rewire. We'll hop on a call and we start in September. So now let me tell you a little bit about Dana. And next time I have her on the show, she'll be with her partner, Kasana. But for now, it's just me and Dana. Dana Croschere is the award-winning producer of Love Heals and is featured as the main character in the film. Her journey is an inspirational one, full of many obstacles, including 2 unsuccessful spinal surgeries in 2020. While she was experiencing some chronic pain, Dana has been able to harness the power of these ancient mind-body practices to facilitate continued healing, which has rippled out in every area of her life. Enjoy today's show. Welcome to the show, everyone. I have a special treat for you. Today's show is really going to help promote a concept that I'm sure most of you understand that I talk about often, but now it's been created into a film. I have Dana Croschere with me, who is the producer and the star of Love Heals. This is a film that I got to see over the weekend at Bruce Lipton's event in Sedona, Arizona. And if you're finding us here on the podcast, then you know I do video. So come on over to jjflizanes.tv and you can meet Dana. If you're finding this on YouTube because you're looking for Dana or for the film, hi, I'm JJ. What that means is this is my show and I'm going to talk. And so if you don't like me, that is totally cool. Dana, where can they find more of just you?
Well, they can find lovehealsfilm.com, and that's going to not only, show myself and my story, but it will help them better understand the journey that I took recently that is displayed in the documentary itself. And then just as a film producer, our company can be found at livewildfilms.com.
Okay. So you know where to go if you don't like me. All right. Now we're going to have a great conversation about Love Heals. And one of the things that became clear as I was watching the film was and Dana will tell a little bit about her story, but I don't want to give it all away because I want you guys to watch the film. And one of the reasons why I stood up very quickly when there were questions is because I wanted to help promote the message that this film has, because it's Dana's personal story. And Dana, tell us a little bit about, first of all, about you and how we even got here.
Yeah, that's quite the story. So I was just kind of going along in my life until 2017, when I had what I thought was a very simple injury, a pulled muscle after running on a treadmill. And unfortunately, that was not healing. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then my other leg started to hurt. And ultimately, the pain started to rise into, my leg. And then it was sciatica and then some lower back pain. And I lasted that way for a couple years, trying everything that I knew to do and everything that, of course, Western medicine tells you to do, going to a chiropractor and physical therapy and all of that stuff. And unfortunately, by 2020, things had gotten much worse when I ended up being convinced that surgery was the only way, because I had an MRI that showed a herniated disc in L5-S1 that was compressing nerves. And I was very reluctant, but it just felt like there were no other options because I was getting worse. And it was really a struggle to walk and to function in my day-to-day life. So yeah, it was a very painful journey. And during that time, my partner, being a filmmaker, ended up picking up her camera long before we knew a documentary was going to be made about my journey. And she just started filming and saying, hey, I don't know where this is going to lead, but this is a really challenging time for us and for you. And I believe in a miracle, and I just really want to have my camera in hand when that happens. So yeah, I ended up having one spine surgery to repair the herniation. And unfortunately, they nicked my spinal, column, my dura, and I ended up having a very, very severe spinal fluid leak and back in surgery 6 weeks later to try to repair it. And they had a lot of challenges during that as well. So I ended up in the intensive care unit for a week and on bed rest for several weeks. I wasn't sure if I was going to recover. And so the journey began.
And it's all in the film. But I want to hear some of the stuff that wasn't in the film. Mm-hmm. Let me go back to, because I know when your injury happened, and I've met Chrisana and I know your partner and I've watched the film, but what were you doing before 2017? Because you're now full on in this film world, documentaries, promoting this film, working on your next film. What were you doing before this?
Nothing related to film work at all. So prior to that, I had spent, I think at the time in 2017, I was in my 14th year of working in corporate America in financial crimes and compliance and regulations for a mega bank. And I was in leadership, and I was kind of going about my life. I would consider the job stressful, and I would be in conference calls all day and stressing out over big projects and different things. And it was one of those times in my life when I recognized, gosh, this is giving me stability, but it wasn't the thing that was setting my soul on fire. I was just going through the motions. And I think a lot of that really led to, in addition to many other things, but led to the pain journey starting. It wasn't serving me in any capacity. So Chrisana and I actually got together in the very beginning of 2017, and that injury happened like 5 months into our connection. So it was very, very early on in our journey. And she was always in video production, like literally since high school. She has another short documentary under her belt prior to Love Heals, but she just works with clients on promotional videos and storytelling, and she's an amazing, amazing storyteller. As you saw the film, but yeah, so she was asked to do Love Heals at a time when I was actually in the middle of my healing journey and recovery from those unsuccessful spine surgeries. And it wasn't even supposed to be that way in the beginning, but I ended up being the character whose journey is followed in the film, and then ultimately became the producer of the film. It was just happening so organically. And I made Chrisanna promise me that she would remind me that I told her while I was in the intensive care unit that if I were to get out of this alive and had any abilities to walk or, any capacity to work again, I begged her to not let me go back to corporate America and to find what is going to serve such a bigger purpose for me where I can help a lot of people. So here we are.
Well, I want to know what you wanted to do before you decided to be smart, quote unquote, and get a corporate job. What did you aspire to do?
It's so interesting. When I was young, I had such a strong passion for working with animals. My very first job was in Chicago, and I worked at Brookfield Zoo in the dolphin show area. And I absolutely loved it. I just have a really strong, deep connection to animals. And I just recognized as time progressed, it didn't really pay the bills, if that makes sense. Those aren't the type of careers at the time that felt like I would be, quote unquote, successful. I look at success very different now, but at the time it didn't make sense for me to keep pursuing that. So I found my way into corporate America pretty early. And because I'm a leader by nature, I started getting promotions early on and doing quite well. So I just never looked back. I thought, this is the way life is supposed to be. And anything that I love to do, I end up doing it as a hobby. So
again, without giving away the movie, because I want y'all to watch it, I want to ask some questions. So the general overview, you've kind of laid the groundwork for the injury and then the surgeries and then the pain and the exploration into healing, basically. And that's what the movie portrays, and the things that you did and the people that you met and the things that you learned and the journey that you both took. And I hope in the future we'll also be able to get Chrisanna on here too, because I'd love to talk to her about that emotional journey for her, not only managing being a filmmaker, but managing being your partner and being able to have to kind of wear both of those roles, and then her also thoughts and opinions about this, because you went down a path that became very spiritual and alternative medicine and healing. Had you ever done any of that kind of stuff before?
I dabbled in it, and I knew there were concepts that I believed. I knew that stress creates illness and pain. Like, I knew that played a role. I know that I didn't know this then as much as I did right after surgery when somebody sent me the book Body Keeps the Score. But I was like, oh, I've had a lot of trauma in my life, a lot of abuse, and my body hung on to it. I mean, I was the type of person that never expressed anger. I was an overachiever, type A personality, and just shoved down a lot of the emotional pain throughout my life, thinking I'd forgiven everybody and I'm just fine. And, the body knows better. It's storing all of that up. And so I had an idea that some of this existed. I learned about meditation and other mind-body practices that I knew were helpful. And I did try some of those, but my mindset was not in a place where it was going to facilitate healing. I was in so much fear. My body didn't feel safe no matter what I tried to tell it, if that makes sense. It just was not in alignment. It was not in harmony. It was not congruent. It was not coherent. It was just completely out of alignment. And I had to take quite the deep dive on the healing journey that I would not have otherwise done without this detrimental spine surgeries that I had. It wasn't something I would have done naturally. But sometimes when life throws these curveballs at us, it almost forces us to take that journey inward. And that's really how it all began. While my journey was primarily physical and I was in so much pain, Chrisana on the sidelines watching me and being my primary caregiver, her journey was incredibly emotional. And we both had a lot of healing to do. And through this process, it was like a mirror. We both had to look at all of the things that were contributing to what brought us to that point. And we took that journey together. And as you'll see in the film, brought 18 other people on the journey with me in Sedona to go into this, completely immersive experience with these tools and this ancient wisdom and these mind-body practices to see what is actually possible when we learn these things and can use them in our day-to-day lives. So yeah, it was incredible.
Do you happen to know your astrological chart by chance?
I don't know. All I know is that I'm a Libra and Chrisana is a Gemini. That's all I know.
Okay. So Libra is an air sign, and that doesn't tell me how you process emotion. That's your moon sign, but Libras are generally, air is about thoughts and thinking. And what I find a lot of times with air signs, I had my last 6-month group of deep dive emotional work program that I did this year. I had a lot of air signs in there, and they really helped me cultivate like the next level of what I'm doing in the world, because I realized that the thought wasn't enough. The idea, the learning, the teaching wasn't enough, and that I had to actualize even more. And I have a Sag moon. So what that means is when I understand something, I immediately make changes. I take action in those changes. It's not a concept that I think about. It's a concept that if it's big enough and I'm ready for it, that I go, if I can't unsee it. If it's a habit that I have, and I see it differently, I will stop that habit immediately because I see it so differently. So how you handle emotion is based on your moon sign. But as a Libra, I also find that a lot of air signs are so in their head that they're very disconnected from their bodies. And so they'll think about their feelings, but they won't feel their feelings. Mm. And so anyway, I was just curious because you mentioned, because it almost sounds like you have an earth moon, because like you said, you wouldn't have chosen this. You had to be forced to do it. And one of the things that I keep promoting, encouraging people, especially anyone who has earth in their chart or who is an earth moon, is that how do you change air? Well, you add extra air. You can add some fire to air. You can add some water and make it bubbles, right? Those all are movable. Water, air, and fire, the elements. But then we have earth. Well, how do you move earth? Well, an earthquake. Like there's not, basically, if we don't get out ahead of this, you'll have change, but you won't like how it gets to you, right? If you aren't willing to make the change, and your body and life is going to say, sorry, you weren't listening. I'm going to do whatever, give you cancer, get you in a car accident, you're going to get divorced, blah, 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 whatever. Some big thing's going to happen. You're going to lose your job. Something's going to happen that's going to force you, because I believe your higher being saying, hey, you're so out of alignment right now. You're not listening to the little cues I'm trying to give you. So in that, were there any little clues and cues that your body or your life was giving you before this injury?
Yeah, but I could only see it now in retrospect. It made so much sense after. I was like, wow, I've actually had many recurring issues physically. Mine really manifests physically. It's in my body. And what you said earlier really resonated, because I'm really good at kind of cutting myself off from here down. Like, I'm fine. I can push through this. I'm strong. I'm a warrior. It's all good. And I really left my body out of the equation. And I will share something vulnerable right now, because that was a very learned thing from childhood. So I think my experiences starting at age 12, maybe earlier, things I may not remember, but I was raped by a stranger at age 12 and then he kept coming back for a straight year. And I was terrified. I was afraid for my life. And so what I learned to do was completely disassociate from my body. And as sad as that is, it was the way that I survived. And unfortunately, that wasn't the only time things happened to me. At 13, then an uncle started, and so on and so on. So it was a really difficult time for me as a kid to not feel like I had a safe space. Adults that are supposed to care for you and nurture you and make sure that you were safe were the ones that were hurting me. So very, very quickly, I learned to disassociate. And now, as in my mid 40s, it is something you have to literally relearn to connect back with your body, which is exactly what I learned to do through Love Heals and through the retreat experience, and getting back into the body and realizing the body is not my enemy. The pain was trying to get my attention, and it was giving me all these signals that something is wrong and I need to get into my body, right? It's not my enemy, it's actually my friend. And it just took me a long time to get there, but that's how I feel today.
At the end of the movie, I'll just tell them this piece because you were with us live over the weekend, and the pressure that you put on yourself to being healed and not having any pain. By the end of the movie, you were happy to just, you had surrendered to living with your pain, but you had announced at the end of the movie to us that you currently were out of back, you had no more back pain. And my first thought was, and you did mention the ankle thing. Did you get a chance to look at what I sent you?
Yes.
Did any of it resonate?
Yes.
Okay.
I tell people all the time, I am not completely free from chronic pain. I'm still working through things. I'm so far along from where I used to be at the beginning of this journey. But yes, I think there are messages. Our body and pain is a messenger. So it's just something that I now pay attention to very quickly.
Well, you're not alone. I think our body holds our subconscious. So it's going to tell us when something's out of balance. What happens is most people don't listen, or they don't put themselves in environments where they can see it. Like I had a retreat here for that 6-month deep dive group. And one of the ladies that was in the group, and people have heard the show, so they know the story, is, until like, it's one thing when you're sitting back and you're listening and you're on a Zoom call, like there's no challenge, and again, I wasn't doing what I'm doing as much now, which is literally pushing people outside their comfort zone on a regular basis, like doing the things that scare them very specifically to them and to their core wounds, not just in general scary things, but something that will change the neuroplasticity of the way that your brain interprets this situation. So that way we can repattern it. But we had gone on some hikes here. And even before we went on the hike, she got all nervous about the minute I mentioned the hike, she went into panic. And before she ever got here, she didn't even know what the hike was going to look like or be like. And when I asked her to go back and watch that video of that meeting that we had, because you can see that it's just the idea of feeling unsafe. And so what we came to in that 6 months at the end was that how we got to identify how unsafe she does really feel in the world. And there's trauma there, similar. And so looking at, one of the things I loved about this weekend, the dialing in, especially when anyone asked me what I did, because I know you weren't there for the whole thing, but I'm sure you've been in some of the work before. Dr. Bruce Lipton, basically the whole presentation is very lecture based. It's history, it's science. It's dumbed down in a really clean way to tell people and to legitimize quantum physics, obviously, and epigenetics, because it is a science, and it's always been, to me, the most important science. Everything will rearrange itself underneath those umbrellas as far as I'm concerned. But again, when I say that, some people just think I'm crazy because I'm not a doctor, and they'll be like, oh yeah, it's all woo woo what you're talking about. And so his presentation is very scientific to prove that it's not woo woo, and that it's very real, and it is the only science that matters. Really. I mean, yes, other things help, but we're talking about the umbrella, which everything falls under. And he boils things down to two beliefs that everybody needs to have in order to heal anything. And those two beliefs are that you love yourself and that you feel safe. So throughout the weekend, when people said, what do you do? I said, I help people love themselves and feel safe. So, or at least I'm trying. Okay. I can't do it for you, but were you around when we were doing some of the muscle testing?
No, I wasn't in there until the next day with the film, but I've been muscle tested by Bruce, and I'm very, very familiar with it.
I just wondered if you tested positive for both things, because it does change. It does fluctuate, based on what's going on with you, but
I didn't test positive.
Still or before?
Before. I haven't been tested recently, but I have grown in so much self-love based on this journey. I in some ways I thought I did love myself, but at the core of my being, I recognized that I really didn't. I just think I'm full of love and I love everybody. Sure, I love myself, but I didn't even look at myself in ways that I do now. I didn't love my body in ways that I'm learning to now. I didn't realize that I am my own best healer and need to check in with myself before I go to this person and get this do this procedure or do this practice? Like, how does it feel in my body? That's loving yourself. It's like giving yourself the opportunity to check in and do what really genuinely feels right to you. And I wasn't doing that. I was giving my power away in so many ways prior to this.
Well, you mentioned like you weren't healed, and I wanted to say, because you have your ankle thing, but that's your body talking to you. One of the very first shows I did before I ever had a podcast, actually, I interviewed a friend of mine years and years ago because my last relationship I was in, that person had a lot of back pain. And I knew it was emotional. But again, I'm not a doctor. So my clients at the time, especially as a personal trainer, would literally say, you're not a doctor, and therefore I'm not going to listen to you. And I was like, okay, whatever. And again, but they loved me and they listened to other things. But when it came to this very specific thing about back pain, but I'd had an experience with a friend in New York when I moved from New York City to Los Angeles in 2000. He had come out to visit, but he had an instance with back pain that was so bad. He was buying boards for the beds underneath. He actually got stranded here for 30 days because he couldn't sit on a plane. It took 2 years. He had gone to a surgeon and they had done the MRI and showed a bulging disc, pinching a nerve. And so of course he's like, oh, here's the legitimate reason why I have back pain. And he did 2 years of physical therapy and Pilates and yoga and massage and meditation, blah, 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 all the things. And it kind of subsided, but it never went away. And then it kind of flared up again. And then he was going to get surgery. And somebody for the second time, the first time he threw the book out, but for the second time, somebody said, you should read Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno. So he read the book. And then at the time, Dr. John was still living and he was in New York City. And so my friend went to have a few sessions with him. And we talked about this, and it was earlier on in my podcast, like literally like 9 years ago. And he said he uses his back pain now as his gauge. If something is off, that's what's the signal. The signal is I have back pain. Oh, something's off, something's wrong. I need to express something. And so I think that while your back pain is dissipated, which most back pain is rage, it is anger. And, but you have the ankle thing, and it comes and goes, whatever, but it's still that little, it's reduced, it's changed, and it has messages for you. And that what I sent to you after we talked was an excerpt from a book called Messages from the Body. And it's literally like the 700-page book that goes over every finger, every vertebrae, every tooth, every like every inch of your body, any pain or disease that you have. And it gives the emotional root of the belief system and possible different. Some of them have many different options, and you just hone in on the one that resonates with you. But it's also about doing something with it. And I just want to share this story. I'd had a nurse friend who had neck pain, and I showed her the book with the neck pain. And I basically said, and the neck pain is kind of easy. It's usually that you're not willing to see someone else's point of view. It's you're being too stubborn to, move your neck to see somebody else's point of view or some other way of doing something. So I told her that. And remember, she's a nurse in Western medicine. And, maybe a week, 2 weeks later, oh yeah, my neck still hurts. I said, I told you what it was. She goes, yeah, but it's still here. I said, I'm sorry, you're a nurse. The diagnosis of the problem is not the treatment of the problem. Just because I told you what it is doesn't mean that's all that it takes. You have to do something about it. You have to change something. You have to release something. You have to emote something. You have to shift. Just because you know what it is doesn't mean it does anything differently to you. So, for some people, sometimes Sag moons, that can be enough. But for most people, it's not. It's just a starting point as a diagnosis to say, here's what the problem is, to give you an awareness to make choices about what to do about it. Now, along your path with the things that you were doing, did you try a bunch of things that didn't work? And did you have somebody guiding you to, do this and this instead? And then, okay, that didn't work, go do this. Like, how did you gather the information to make choices about what to do?
Yeah, it was really random. And a lot of people have opinions about what to do. So it wasn't hard for somebody to say, oh, well, I went to this practitioner that uses this machine called the scrambler, and it will scramble your brain into like bypassing the pain signals. And I was like, okay, I'll try it. A lot of stuff like that in the beginning. And then after surgeries, that was all trying to prevent surgery. How do I get through this? What are the things that I can do? So yeah, I would listen to many people and not know how to check in with myself to feel what really was resonating or what my body needed. And afterwards, I think based on what you just said, you reminded me about the importance of the journey I took with therapy. And if it was just traditional talk therapy, I don't think that would have been as useful. I'm a huge fan of therapy. I think it's so important. But after the surgeries and began the healing journey, I was doing things that I had never done before. I started journaling, or what I call expressive writing. There's a person out there, her name is Nicole Sachs. She's kind of in this chronic pain world. She calls it journal speak. And it was something that I learned to start doing, is expressing the rage that I didn't know that was in me, or the anger that I never expressed. If you had asked me prior to surgery or prior to learning more about this mind-body connection, are you an angry person? I'd be like, absolutely not. I don't know that I've ever gotten angry really and expressed, yelling. And anyway, so, of course there were times somebody would push enough buttons, like I'm thinking, of X's that would, fight. But at the end of the day, we all have these things within us that go unexpressed. And then if you take into consideration that I lived the first 27 years of my life completely out of alignment, meaning I was taught that loving somebody of the same gender would send me straight to hell. And I lived with so much fear in my whole body, mind, and spirit about who I actually was authentically. So add that layer to living out of alignment. It doesn't matter if it's due to your sexuality, or you're stuck in a relationship or a job that is completely out of alignment. It's doing something to your physiology. So there was so much buildup of things that I really needed to reconcile on the other side of this surgery that I just don't know that I would have realized were still part of what I was experiencing in the here and now, right? But it is, these things are carried through in time as they just kind of attach themselves to our body. I wouldn't have ever guessed that that was part of the equation. So it wasn't until going through also some deep therapeutic practices and somatic practices, meaning getting into the body as I'm going through that. It wasn't just all in the brain or just talk therapy. It was so instrumental in my healing journey, because it was the stuff that I wasn't able to address on my own otherwise.
No, I get that. And what's funny is that you share a belief or an assumption that a lot of people do, is that if someone's angry, you'd be able to see it. And actually the ones that are more plagued with back surgeries and back injuries and chronic back pain are the ones that will never dare to express anger. You have it, you're just not willing to let it out, which is why it's all on your back. So, right. Because it's the quiet ones. I mean, that my friend, he's an Indian gay man. That was part of it, coming out to his family. But also would meditate his whole life, and an air sign. He's a Gemini. So we take all that and we have someone who will never express anger. You don't feel an ounce of anger when you were with him, because it was all stuck in his back, and because it's not okay to be angry, and for all the other reasons. And so it's like the nicest, smallest, petite people who don't want to hurt a fly, who have never expressed their anger, are some of the ones that who have the worst pain. And you'd be like, oh, that person's not angry. No, you just don't see it because they're actually not allowed. Anger can be a very instrumental tool for moving energy. And on the vibrational scale of emotion, it's the lid on the pot. It's the lid on the boiling pot of what's underneath. It's never about the anger. It's always about the sadness and fear underneath it. But if we don't allow ourselves to express all of the emotions, if we have something that happens and we push it down and repress, then it's energy. It's like I used to say, it's like a calorie. It either gets used or stored. A calorie gets used as energy when we exercise or just to replenish our bodies, or it gets stored as fat potentially. So emotion comes in and it gets used or stored, or gets expressed or stored. It's really that simple, because it is still energy. So I think that was a powerful thing to say, and also to put out there, and for people to be reminded that if you're someone who thinks, I'm not an angry person, that doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you don't have anger. It doesn't mean you don't have it stuck, like locked somewhere deep inside of you, and you're afraid of it. You're afraid of that power, and you're afraid of remembering or reliving. Or I know a lot of people don't want to relive their pain. That's why they choose to push it away. But it's not about necessarily reliving it. It's just about pushing through it and allowing it to come out, and going through, allowing the energy to disperse, allowing yourself to express what you never had the chance to, or the stuff that's been building up over time. Of the different things that you did, I know for the movie's going to show people what you probably will say was the most impactful thing, but minus the obvious thing in the movie, were there any other, maybe the journaling, were there any other things that really stuck out for you as transformative for your pain level?
Yeah, there are many. One I don't want to talk about because I do want people to see the movie. There's a practitioner I worked with that really helped me release a lot that I didn't know I was storing and I didn't know how to release, to be honest with you. So, but I will say that there are a few other things that really stand out. First and foremost, when we have something going on in our body where we are experiencing pain, we have fear of movement, fear of taking long walks, fear of fill in the blank. I mean, I was terrified of walking on a treadmill ever again. Like I had this association, like, wait a minute, that's where my injury started. And I will tell you that finding ways to start moving and feeling safe was maybe the most transformative. And going to the retreat was important that we show in the film because, we're in a group setting and I kept telling myself, gosh, these practices of connecting with my body and doing some of these modalities, whether it's Qigong or Tai Chi or meditation or breath work or whatever it is, they're not hurting me. This is not injuring me. And I think it was just finding that level of safety within myself and starting to move and trust that this actually is going to be helpful. So instead of, I will say, at some point, I was so fearful that I didn't want to do anything. That was more harmful to me than getting up and doing one thing that I knew that I was capable of, that I knew was not going to hurt me or injure me. That was probably the most transformative. So it was like getting movement back in my life in a way that felt safe was hugely important. And anything that connected my breath with my movement, I very much resonate with Qigong type movements, was extremely helpful to me as well. I mean, there were so many things, but I would say those things I always really go back to. Because after you have surgery or you've had an experience, doctors put the fear in me, don't move, don't lift too much, don't twist, don't bend, you're going to reherniate, I just was terrified. So I think it was overcoming that fear and getting into my body in a safe way where I could trust that I'm going to be okay. And instead of treating myself like a victim all the time of all the things I can't do and woe is me because I can no longer do all these things I love, it was, okay, Dana, what can you do today that's going to bring you a little bit of joy, that is going to make you feel good, and, try to have some fun. I lost all the fun. It was like, it became so dark and heavy. And until I flipped the script on that and found ways to bring a little bit of joy into my life and find the things that I could do, that was an absolute game changer.
Well, that's a good message for everyone because most people don't have a lot of joy or fun in their lives. And it's amazing what happens when you add that back in. But you're fully functional now. You run on a treadmill, you twist, you bend, you lift things, right?
So I am so close to fully functioning. I think because I keep having this, well, the truth is I twisted my ankle very badly towards the end of filming for Love Heals. I was actually at one of the participants from the retreat. We did a follow-up after like 21 days of them learning these practices to see how they were still helping them in their healing journeys. And it was this uneven patio pavement, these big like stones that had these huge gaps. And I caught my foot just right. So that I twisted my ankle so hard. So it's been, since the end of filming for Love Heals, that has been part of my healing journey as well. So to say running on a treadmill, not doing that right now, but would I consider myself a fully functioning human? Absolutely, because it's my mindset. Can I take a walk and enjoy the outdoors? Can I walk on a treadmill? Yeah. I think the difference is now is that I'm not putting so much pressure on myself to say, I'm only whole when I can fill in the blank. No way, I'm whole right now. In whatever capacity that means today, I am fully whole and I can live my life in a way that still brings me joy. And so, yeah, I think it was more of a mindset shift.
We'll talk when we're done. I have some other resources that might be helpful also for you in that. But let's start talking about the film. So where can people see it? Where can they find it? What does it cost? Where can they find you?
Okay, perfect. So I personally am on social media, so they can find me under my name, Dana Croschere, and I'm sure you can put that in the notes so people can find me. But really, I run all of the social media and all of the email exchanges that come into our lovehealsfilm.com website. That is going to be the main source where people can learn not only about the film, but if there's a screening available, they'll see it there. We do have a screening that starts August 17th and runs through the 28th. So that is a very exciting launch of the film because it's not always available right now. There's limited screenings that we have. And this screening is going to be a little bit lower. We're finally able to offer it at $10. And while that might seem like a lot for some people, when you have an independent documentary film, there's a lot of costs associated with all of the creation of that. So $10 per ticket is going to give you access to the film for, I think it's 11 days in that time frame. And you can watch it as many times as you want. And then can follow the journey and some of the behind the scenes and events we have coming up on Love Heals Film on Instagram and Facebook. So we're really, really excited to have people join our community.
So today is August 22nd. So you'll have 5 days, 22nd or 6th, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th. Sorry. No, you have 7 days, 7 days to watch the film. Pay your $10 and watch it 5 times and go through the film and take the notes and watch all the people and be inspired, especially if you have any kind of chronic pain. One of the things I was making notes of as I was watching the film, which is going to be the title of today's episode, is about chronic pain is a lack of self-love and being able to find that within yourself. And again, chronic, not acute, but chronic pain that lasts for a long time is definitely a message and a signal that we're lacking something. We're disconnecting from our bodies, and the body is trying to tell you something, and you haven't either figured it out yet, or you haven't listened, or it isn't big enough yet for you to care. So please go to lovehealsfilm.com and watch the documentary. Check the link in the show notes or here under the video here on YouTube, and be in touch with Dana and with the film because there's other films coming. Why don't we just quickly tell them about the next film that's going to happen? We're going to do another show about that when it's ready, but just give them a little preview.
You got it. Well, first, let me say that Love Heals is always going to be such a special film to me, not just because it's my journey, but because I see the ripple effect and how much hope and healing that it is spreading across the world. So our film has won 3 awards and is actually going on PBS in late October or early November. So we are actually still on the hunt for a couple more sponsors that we can add to our film before and after it shows over the next 3 years, which will end up being millions of times. We can place an ad for an organization that feels aligned with our message. So I just wanted to say that first. And our next project is incredibly exciting. I volunteered for some equine assisted services and therapies in the past. And I was really inspired when I was leading a horse with a 7-year-old autistic boy who had never spoke a single word in his life. And that day, we were in a session and he spoke his first words and everybody cried, and it was such a miracle. And so that imprinted on my brain something fierce. And after we got done with Love Heals, I started volunteering again around horses and working with kids. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's something here, because I could just watch these miracles unfold. And then HeartMath Institute, if you're familiar, came out with some of the studies and research that had been done about the horse's heart and the human heart, and how we actually synchronize in the presence of a horse, and we can have heart coherence. And I thought, oh my gosh, this science behind what is actually happening, what is the healing power of horses? And so began the journey of a film called Rescued Hearts. We have been filming with the scientists and experts and researchers with HeartMath and some others in the conscious community like Greg Braden. In addition to the fact that, I don't know if any of you have heard of Heartland, but we are actually going to Canada to film with the lead actress, whose name is Amber Marshall, about her connection to these sacred animals and how when we connect with them at that level, how healing that can be. And horses, frankly, they deserve to be seen for the incredible animals that they are. They're just so healing to the human spirit. So yes, rescuedheartsfilm.com is our website. We are in the process right now of also raising sponsors and funds to complete the film. We will be done filming probably in early October, and the film should be out by the middle of next year at the very latest. So we're very, very excited about that.
So get on the list and follow them so that you can hear about that film also. And of course, I'll have you guys back so we can talk about that film and any new things you've learned and wisdom you've gained to share with the masses about, even still with your journey, right? Because no one's journey's done. No one's journey's ever done, but there are levels that we get to. And when we kind of like get to the end of one, and then it's like, okay, what's the next expansion for me? Where am I going next? And this is probably going to be another one of those up levelers for you. And can't wait to hear how that affects you and your health and your conditions and your outlook and your life and your business and your relationships and everything else.
Yes, it is constantly changing, I assure you. So thank you so much for that. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show and share about Love Heals and about Rescued Hearts with your community. I mean, that's our whole mission as filmmakers, is to raise consciousness, spread awareness, hope, and healing, and love to as many people as we can. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you over the weekend and to watch your film and to be able to share it, because Love Heals is definitely a message that I've been touting too, because to me, that just means you're in alignment with who you really are, and you know who you really are, and you're channeling all this love energy. And it's really like, that's it. Love heals, and fear takes us down and creates all the bad things. And in a scientific community, that's not always looked at as, oh, that's too simplistic, JJ. Like, that can't be it. I'm like, but it is it. Okay, let me use a lot more words to tell you how that is, but it literally is just that simple. And for people like me, I got that a long time ago and I understood that. And I joked with Bruce when he was on the show the first time, because he's been on the podcast twice and he'll be coming back to do the honeymoon effect. But I said to him the first time, I said, look, no disrespect, but when I read the cover of your book, I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, I don't need to read it. Biology belief, your belief affects your biology. I got it. I get it. I don't need to know anything else. Like, that's you. I know. I like knowing that you legitimize this fact, but I'm good. I'm good. I don't need to know the science. Maybe somebody else needs to be convinced, but I know 100% that your beliefs affect your biology. So I joke, because I used to always say, I don't need to read the book, but it wasn't because I know it, like scientifically know it. It's because I get it. It resonates. It all has always resonated. And I've always been the weird one who talks about this in a physical, form. I mean, I've been in functional medicine and personal training for 25 years. So tell somebody that, when I learned about the back pain, I'm like, oh, that's anger. So I started looking at the body energetically very differently. And I would be the trainer who, yes, we were going to do the nutrition and the hormones and your exercise. And I'm excellent with biomechanics, by the way. So we could talk about your knee, but I had to retire from that because it wasn't the bigger picture. The bigger picture was the energy inside the entire body that's reacting. It's not just about fixing the muscle or eating the right thing. It's like, okay, well, where are your emotions? What energy are you holding on to your body? So it was a pleasure to get to meet you in person and to watch the film. And I can't wait for everybody else to watch it too. So everybody, it's out right now as of the recording of the show, as of the release of the show. And you have about 7 days to watch it as many times as your $10 can let you. So, so Dana, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and energy and allowing me the opportunity.